Welcome to today's webinar, Understanding Cloud PCs and Virtual Desktops. My name is Ryan Emmerich. I'm a Kite Experience Manager here at Kite Tech Group. And joining us today as main presenter is Adam Atwell, our Cloud Solutions Architect. He's also a Microsoft 365 MVP, by the way. We are glad that you've chosen to spend some time with us here and learn about some of these PC solutions in the cloud. I know Adam has an awesome batch of content in store as we dive in together and take a look at this tool for your business that can really elevate workers' experience and productivity. Some of you may be familiar with us, but for those who are not, we're a managed IT service provider and consulting firm based here in the US. And really, we have a nationwide presence in some of those areas. We've been around for more than 30 years in the small business space, the SMB space. And really, our main goal is to help your team and businesses around the country leverage technology for improved efficiency and productivity for your team, as well as elevated security. So that's a key piece we want to help you guys with. We work with businesses, again, all over the place in different verticals, insurance agencies, nonprofits, from accounting firms to legal firms. So really, we'd love to get in touch to see how we can help improve your business experience if you're not working with us today. I listed a couple more services we provide on the slide here. Take a look at those, and we'll have contact information. You can get in touch with us to explore maybe a bit of those more in depth after the webinar. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand the presentation here over to Adam, who will introduce himself and kind of lay out what we expect to hear about Microsoft and their cloud computing offerings today. Adam?
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate the introduction. Happy to be with everyone here today. For the folks on the call, thanks for being here to cover a cool topic here, talking about virtual desktops and kind of the cloud PCs, what they are. You can see there on the screen, we have some exciting news to share. We got awarded two things really to celebrate. Outside of the certifications you can see there on the screen, administrator, enterprise expert, as well as Teams administrator. These are different complexities. You can see the 3 stars, 2 stars, and 1 star certifications for Microsoft 365. So we did achieve those in our pursuit to be a Microsoft cloud solution provider, and that just helps us really serve our clients better. And so in addition to that, I was nominated and awarded what's called the Microsoft MVP, or Most Valuable Professional Award. So that's quite an honor, being recognized by those in the community, along with Microsoft, for my contribution to the Microsoft 365 apps and services space. And so that's just an exciting thing we wanted to share with you all. And you can continue to expect content out of things we're going to be producing around the Microsoft 365 space. I'll lead that effort for our business, for our outside customers, and our marketing efforts. And of course, if you're interested in connecting with me, we did put the QR code over here on the side. Feel free to link me on LinkedIn and do a connection request there. And you can look for me to post regular articles or videos around things in the Microsoft 365 space. So all that being said, let's take a look at our agenda today. You can see we have quite a few different things we're going to talk about. First of all, just kind of what the difference between a cloud PC and a virtual desktop is. And we're going to talk about the Windows 365 Cloud PC service and overview that. We're also then going to follow up and review the Azure Virtual Desktop infrastructure and what that's all about. Then we'll do kind of a side-by-side comparison. And from there, in addition to the side-by-side comparison, we'll go through and talk about, kind of why those different costs, kind of what those cost comparisons look like between a physical cloud PC and virtual desktop, and then additional considerations for your business and things to think about while using them. So that's kind of an overview. So let's just jump right in. We're going to talk about kind of understanding what the roots of what cloud PCs and virtual desktops are. So for starters, you can see these are a few different snapshots of kind of what today's computing solutions are. We're talking about basically a client PC, right? That's the physical thing on your desk, and that's what you're used to using, right? It sits there, you turn it on and interact with it, right? In addition to that, the client PC has been around for a long time, right? And so large organizations have started to take things like you would see and virtualize them. So they stand up a local infrastructure. Some of you actually might even have one or may have had one in the past, called like a remote desktop server or a terminal services environment. And so those are environments in the virtualization space that really are kind of part and parcel for how folks would centrally access applications that would live in a single location. So yesterday's way of accessing apps was you had a central database or a central app that you would need to be in your business office for, or excuse me, if you remoted in from home, then you might go ahead and connect in to the server, and on the server, then you'd get access to company data and applications and those kinds of things. So that's some ways that kind of virtualization has came. And then if you look at how it's grown now, there's lots of DaaS providers out there, or desktop as a service providers. And so you pay them a fixed amount every month, and then they provide a virtual computer desktop to you. From that desktop, you're able to go ahead and connect in, right? And you can also see your data and kind of get back to it wherever you're at. And so that's a little bit about kind of what today's computing solutions look like. When you talk about kind of work and how it's changed, you can't really stop and not recognize the fact that, you know, a lot of folks say they want the ability to work remotely. They want collaboration opportunities, but they will also want to meet in person, right? And then in addition to that, we also have managers who are saying that, you know, they might need some flexible work from home policies. And so these are just many different aspects of kind of how things look with regards to what, you know, cloud needs are, right? In addition to that, you know, a hybrid work really creates new challenges for folks and ways that really become problems that maybe we didn't know we had to solve before. Like, let's say you need to onboard or provision different computers, right? The zero touch and virtual approach to getting in, you know, getting in employees and vendors and contractors up and running across lots of different locations. That gives you the ability to really do this in a good way. That being said, let's talk about kind of what makes up a cloud PC, right? And the PC is surrounded by several different pieces, the applications, of course, the content that you're accessing from them. Of course, you're going to have storage that stores your operating system, and then your settings, and then, of course, all the horsepower to run that PC. And all that's surrounded by cloud security and identity management, right? And so you want to make sure that your devices are secure and that when you're accessing them, you're protected on them. And so if you kind of look at Windows in the cloud, really, you know, there's lots of different benefits here around what, you know, Windows in the cloud is. And Windows in the cloud could be either one of these. It could be Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365, but, you know, you can get it across many devices. It's updated and always ready to go. It's very customizable and familiar to you as a user. In addition to that, you know, it's resilient and scalable. You can turn it up or turn it down however you need to. And then, of course, you know, the costs are pretty predictable, and you can buy it, you know, and acquire it from pretty much anywhere, which is great. You know, for how kind of Cloud PC enables your business, what does it mean? It gives your users the ability to work wherever they're at, whatever device they want to go ahead and have, right? They can work from any which device they want. And so that'll give you the ability to really work from wherever you want or what device you want. It doesn't matter. It's platform agnostic. In addition to that, for businesses, it gives businesses the opportunity to do work in different ways. They can attract new talent by having and supporting hybrid workforce, which is great. And then lastly, for IT, it allows IT to scale and get folks moving and using IT faster, of course, which is great. And then, of course, we talk about how does it streamline? It streamlines the IT management, and you can go and quick setup of secure PCs. If I wanted to provision a Windows 365 PC for you right now, I could do it in a matter of minutes. And then you can have that same seamless experience across all devices. And then, of course, you can provision devices anywhere in the world. So it's easy to get going, and it's easy to keep growing and scaling based on your needs. These are some specific ways that we find that virtualization applies and makes a lot of sense. First of all and foremost, you have this aspect of security and regulation, right? In the financial services industry, we have a lot of requirements around security and regulation. And so those things just keep coming, and they'll continue to keep coming. And so virtualization helps you stay up to date with those things. Let's say you have an elastic workforce, meaning you have short-term employees, like you have a seasonal workforce or those kinds of things. Virtualization is great. It allows you to scale up and scale down based on those needs. What if you're a business that's acquiring other businesses or trying to grow your business through acquisition? Mergers and acquisitions, these are great opportunities for leveraging, different ways to easily scale things. And then, of course, let's say you need to provision or allow resources in a temporary capacity to one of your partners or a contractor. Let's say you do some back office work that you contract out. You can do that easily and provision a desktop for someone. And then, of course, there's remote employees. So let's say you run a call center, or you have remote offices, or let's say that you want to give your folks the ability to choose what kind of device they work from, right? That gives you the ability to really kind of work and choose anywhere you want. But basically, it'll support whatever your remote employee workforce needs are across the board. So then there's the specialized app workloads. And let's say that, it seems like you need to test an application out, right? You can go and you can provision an app inside of a virtual environment that's completely isolated from your regular production environment. And then you can test and kind of see how things work out there. And then, of course, last but not least, the great part about all of these different products around the cloud PCs, whether you're using Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365, you can go ahead and basically integrate across the Microsoft stack. We have Defender, we have Endpoint Manager, which manages the devices. We have the Microsoft 365 apps where you consume all these things. And then, of course, we have Azure Active Directory, which manages your identities. Defender protects the whole thing. So all these things are built to work together. Let's jump in and talk more specifics around Windows 365. This is Cloud PC desktop for an end user. And so, what is it? It's similar to, any virtual option. You're going to get the ability to go and have the same experience across your devices. The apps and the data, they stay with your stuff. They stay with you wherever you're at. You can take them with you. You don't have to lug around the PC that has all this power. You can just go ahead and leverage what's there. You can have different compute options. What's compute mean, Adam? Compute means the different sizes or strengths, right? Say you need something that's really powerful because you run a lot of data. You have different options. And then, of course, you have integrated security and identity management across that stack, right? So, a lot of folks, they'll look at their existing PC and they'll say, well, I don't want to necessarily provide a really fancy desktop PC and a virtual PC for maybe a temporary employee. Well, then you can get them a nice desktop in the cloud, something with more CPU and RAM and storage. And then you can limit the amount of dollars that you're spending around that desktop PC. In addition to that, the pricing is fixed. So you can have a single fixed price that you pay every month. And then let's say you want to turn it up or down. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to turn it on for one user, and then that user leaves. Well, you'll turn it off, and you're not spending the money on a dedicated PC resource that user went and used, right? You're actually going to be able to go and completely get that cost back and not have it in the long term. So then obviously all of your stuff, it's high security, all the stuff's in the cloud, right? You have lots of different ways that you can connect to it. You can get access to all your company resources in minutes, your different shared resources. In addition to that, you can go ahead and have different ways you can metric these PCs or analyze them and how they're being used. So let's say you want to see, well, did the 32 gig of RAM PC was there really a need for that? Or can we scale that back? Because that's about twice the amount of cost. So you can do different reports and analyze kind of use that you have inside of these PCs. So Microsoft offers two different flavors of Windows 365. And Windows 365 Business and Enterprise, both of which you can purchase online or through your reseller partner. In addition to that, both of them support Azure AD Join. But you'll notice that for the enterprise one is the only one that's going to support the hybrid join option. And so the hybrid join option really requires that you have another piece of on-prem or cloud infrastructure that you're connecting to. In addition to that, Windows 365 Enterprise is built to be managed at scale with Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And so you're going to be, enrolled into Intune, you're going to be managed and secured through the device management features that are in Endpoint Manager. And then on the business side, the business SKUs are limited to 300 users, whereas the enterprise has an unlimited number of users. And you also need to have you have the ability to add an Azure subscription. If you have a virtual environment you want to connect that Windows 365 Enterprise device to, you can do that. Here's some more specific kind of feature-based things. You can see on the enterprise side at the bottom, you get some advanced device management. You get some advanced service health or diagnostics. You also get endpoint reporting based on kind of performance and those kinds of things. And then you get the ability to build images or software sets that you can manage and implement. And then lastly, you get a universal print integration. So let's say you have local printers that you want to work with. You can do that and push that with the Enterprise Edition. The Business Edition is really meant to be operated on its own, right? It goes and it has a real simple management, not very many features in terms of advanced management, and really it's just kind of set to turn up and be used. You can see that from a platform perspective, you can get to Windows 365 Business across any of these different platforms, be it tablet, desktop, phone, Windows, Mac, Android, iOS. And then, of course, they offer these different configurations, right? You can see the beefiest of things, 8 CPUs, 32 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage space. All of that is off to the left there. And then, of course, you can go down all the way to the lightest machine they make, which has 2 CPUs, 4 gigs of RAM, and 64 gigs of space for the business side, right? And then you can get a discount if you're leveraging Windows 11 Pro on a device. You can have the hybrid benefits, meaning you can save a little bit of money on the license itself, which is great. So in addition to that, you have the Windows 365 for excuse me, sorry about that, for enterprise, right? And the enterprise, you'll notice the most tangible difference here is that they offer this one CPU, 2 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of storage space option, and you're not going to get that anywhere other than the enterprise SKU. And so let's say you're running a web app or something along those lines. That's the kind of thing that you would see on the far end of the spectrum. And it's like a $20 per user per month kind of SKU. It's really a good deal. So that's a high level overview of what you can get and see. And really, Windows 365 is meant to be purchased and used, not really managed in anything significant. But you really, if you're looking to do something small, let's say you're adding 1 or 2 desktops, this might be a good fit for you. But then let's talk a little bit about kind of what the Azure Virtual Desktop is and why you might use that. So if you're going to add more than 10 seats, 10 is about the line that you get to where you really want to see and start to consider Azure Virtual Desktop, because from a cost standpoint, that's really where the benefit starts to come in. So, as you look across the Azure Virtual Desktop, you're going to get the only multi-session Windows 10 or Windows 11 experience. There's optimizations that are built around this product that are built for Office 365. In addition to that, you can migrate from, Windows Server or RDS. You can get your desktop and your apps, and you can light them up and send them right on up to the Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop infrastructure. And then, of course, you can scale this and deploy it in a short effort and in a short amount of time. From a high level, this is kind of the way it works and where the different control points are and responsibility points are. So you can see Microsoft manages the web access, the diagnostics, the gateway, the backend management, and then the load balancing on their servers. Whereas we are responsible, you or a partner are responsible for managing the desktop, the servers, and then the remote apps that you publish. And then, of course, all the backend infrastructure, the compute, the storage, and the networking that connects it are all Microsoft's responsibility. All this stuff, similar to the other services that you'll find, have the ability to leverage and really kind of work and coexist with all the rest of the existing Microsoft infrastructure that's out there. So you have 365 for identity management, conditional access, multi-factor authentication. And then you have Azure, which is so huge, and all the things that run through Azure on a daily basis, 6.5 trillion signals a day. That's a huge amount of stuff that runs across their servers. $1 billion annual cybersecurity investment there. And then, of course, you can see how all those things come together to really secure this infrastructure. And then, in addition to all those things that you have and the security and flexibility you have, you also can get these other things, like you can virtualize applications. How many of you are sitting here in the audience and have a legacy app that you're maintaining? TAM, QuickBooks, some kind of desktop, DS Pro, you name it, we've heard of it. And people, everybody's got one. I guarantee you, time clock, and you could be using an online version, whatever it is. So everyone has something. Well, you can take that app and you can put it right in the cloud and give it a virtual interface that you can connect to. And in addition to that, let's say you have, for some reason, some Windows 7 desktop needs. Well, you can get extended security updates that you can push if you're laying this on top of Azure. And then, of course, it's integrated with the security across the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, like we talked about. So the one other thing that folks don't always know is that Azure Virtual Desktop licensing, there is licensing that comes with your existing your existing subscriptions that you have. And so if you're using a Microsoft 365 Business Premium license, then you can go ahead and leverage the licensing you're already paying for Azure Virtual Desktop inside of that license. And so when you go to put your Azure Virtual Desktop infrastructure together and you pay for those costs, you check the box and you say, I have business premium, which means you actually have use rights that reduce your overall monthly cost there. In addition to that, there is RDS and Cal licenses. So let's say you have an existing virtual environment, then you can go ahead and leverage that virtual environment and the money you've spent on it to reduce the cost of the licensing here in the cloud. There's a question here from Darren in the audience. I'm just going to go ahead and answer it now. Darren asks, can it host Microsoft front-end app with a SQL backend? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're doing that. We have that being done actually, Darren, in a couple of different flavors. We put up some BDE stuff in the backend. And then we've done some front-end access in a browser or integration with other applications as well. So yeah, that'll work for sure. So then, we talked about how the costs for the Windows 365 are fixed. You pay a price per user per month. Azure Virtual Desktop, that tipping point again is about 10 users, right? So if you're going through and you have 10 users, this might be something you'd consider. And then the costs, they break down based on your utilization or the things that you're actually using, right? And so you can see here that 70% of the cost is actually the CPU cycles or the performance of the machine, right? And then in addition to that, you have other things like storage costs for your operating system, Windows, or your user profiles and those kinds of things, as well as networking and other kinds of things. But basically, these consumption costs vary each month, right? And so those are going to be different pieces of costs that you'll see come in together. And then this stuff is priced based on what you're using, right? And what's being consumed. And so you see those prices come through and kind of what they look like. Now, there are a few different things I mentioned earlier. If you have a slide that already has Azure Virtual Desktop rights in it or AVD licensing included, you can get a discount. There's another discount that a lot of folks don't know about, and they're called Azure Reserved Virtual Machine Instances. And so you can, if you lock into a 1 or a 3, you can do a 2-year as well, I believe, then you can go ahead and really go and reduce your cost by as much as 72% if you're paying you're making a commitment for those multi-year deals. And so, what we recommend typically with folks is we say, all right, well, why don't you give the service a go? We put folks on the service, we tune it a little bit. And then after we've done that, we'll go back and we'll say, all right, now that you've done it, before we light this up and put an Azure virtual, reserved instance into play, do you think it's what you like? Are you good with it? And if they say yes, then we'll get them an Azure reserved virtual instance and save some more additional dollars there. Lastly, on the Azure Virtual Desktop, if you look at the Microsoft 365 side, it's the Windows 365 side, rather, it's all managed by Microsoft, right? Very little management to do there. But you can see here, Azure Virtual Desktop is a service that folks are using and leveraging, and partners are coming in to support and build around it. A lot of the content we brought in here today has been provided by Microsoft, or we've customized it a bit, or our other partner, Nerdio, to help really kind of build and manage these virtual infrastructures. And so this is a growing space that there's a lot of investment in significantly. So now that we've kind of covered a bit about Windows 365, the standalone simple version of virtual machines, and then we've talked a little bit about Azure Virtual Desktop, which really, again, once you start to do it at scale, that's when you start to see some of those benefits. Let's talk about some of the comparisons more specifically. And so, for the Windows, Cloud PC, where is it right? It's right for folks that really don't have internal IT staff. You still need some help turning it up and getting it going. But, really, let's say you have a less mature IT support staff, or, IT strategy is not as robust. Well, Windows 365 is going to allow you to purchase a service with little to no management and have a really have a really predictable pricing model, right? And give you a Windows 10 or a Windows 11 desktop, and then off you go. And then Azure Virtual Desktop gives you the ability to choose what you need. You can go and you can stand up a multi-session environment for your general population, or you can stand up dedicated boxes that are really, really isolated outside of the shared pool for individuals to access that have dedicated resources to them. In addition to that, you're going to have a variance in your pricing based on your usage. So that will come and vary over time. In addition to that, you do actually need some backup management associated with the Azure Virtual Desktop platform. And so that's something that, like you would have with a local backup on your server infrastructure, that's something you're going to need to consider. And then it does have support around full control and management, full configuration. You can publish that QuickBooks app. Let's say, again, you're working from a full out Microsoft 365 environment, but you still want to make Peachtree or QuickBooks available. Well, you can publish that in an app where somebody can connect and get to it as they need it, which is great. And we see that all the time. And then lastly, it does give you the ability to support other technologies for virtualization like Citrix and VMware. This is just kind of, an example. You can get to these things from, on-prem VDI infrastructure, right? And you can connect to cloud. You can also do it from end user PCs, either one. And then, if you want Cloud PC, you don't need a VDI, you don't have any internal skills, well, Windows 365 is a good option for you. If you think about how maybe you might have additional needs, like you need that integration with Citrix or VMware or other hybrid cloud solutions, you also have varying usage, right? So if you pay for Windows 365, the lights are on all the time, right? A Windows 365 device is on all the time, regardless of what's using it. Whereas if you're paying for Azure Virtual Desktop, let's say you have peak time where you ramp up, and then off peak, those times are going to go down, just like that BGE budget billing, right? You're going to get the shared usage and shared consumption benefit. And then, depending on your business model, your IT staff, things may vary, so that both of the options are there for you. A few more specifics, we kind of covered some of these. The administration is one of the biggest things. You're going to have a limited amount of flexibility in what you can manage and configure and change on that Windows 365 side. The Cloud VDI or Azure Virtual Desktop, you're going to have a lot of options that you can configure. Here again, this is a different kind of look at this, right? But a similar deal. Do you need a remote application streaming? You need to publish that QuickBooks option. Well, if you need to do that, you're not going to be able to do that with Windows 365 if you want to make that QuickBooks app available to the computer directly on that local desktop. Do you have some level of hybrid, or do you need the ability to meet really crazy compliance certifications? Well, both of these solutions have great compliance around them, and so they're great ways to consider it. So then, you can see here we talked about a lot of these things. Windows 365, it's simple, it's easy, it's predictable monthly pricing. You don't need a crazy amount of experience. Azure Virtual Desktop, you can really put a lot of power behind these things. You can scale these things up. You can push those apps and publish them as you need to. And then you can leverage existing technologies like Citrix or VMware as you need them. So let's talk a little bit about some cost comparisons. This is a really kind of a simple view on cost. And then we'll talk about some other considerations. And so a lot of folks say, well, Adam, can you kind of show me these, this pricing over time? Now, most people go through a replacement cycle that's somewhere between 3 and 5 years. And nowadays it's probably about that 4-year mark. A desktop PC is probably going to run you between $1,750 and $2,000, right around there. And then, if you're looking at the mid-tier Windows 365 business SKU, it's about $1,476 at $41 a month. Now, if you look at Azure Virtual Desktop, and you're talking about that minimum of 10 seats, you can almost see those numbers cut in half, right? And so you can see, it goes down to about $29 a month. So that savings, if you're looking around the 3-year mark, or let's just say you need a PC for a few days, right? Even if you buy the Windows 365 business standard, for a month or two, that you're going to save that money in the long run than buying a PC that you're going to sit at your desk. So if you look a little bit more specifically, you can see these prices and how they kind of break out, right? The Windows 365 is off to the side there on the left, and you can see there's a variance in pricing. It starts as low as $20 per user per month, and it scales all the way up to $158. And then if you look to the far right side, you'll see there's a huge variance in cost reduction if you're going and you're using Azure, reserved instances, right? And so those 3-year instances really start to save you those dollars over time. And so the dollars will continue to go down and really save you the longer you go. And so that's a little bit on the pricing. So then we talk about kind of use cases for your business, right? What do you need to think about before making this decision? Well, do you want to pay that money up front? Do you want to pay that monthly? How do you want to do that? What kind of IT experience do you have? Do you have good internal Azure expertise, or do you not really have much of that? What are other IT priorities, right? Does IT want to leverage existing VDI and move, to a newer cloud solution? Or do they have other things that they want to invest their time in, that are higher priorities? And then, of course, remote workers is another thing that often comes up. And either one of these solutions would be great for remote workers. Then you look at enterprise scenarios, right? These we covered these earlier. You can really, it's secure. There's the ability to easily turn up and scale more devices as you need them, and that's great. And then mergers and acquisitions and temporary workforces, these are great for those kinds of things as well. And then basically, if you think about some other things over the long haul, some of the downsides, a lot of people don't really talk about the downsides. They just kind of present all these facts and then that's about it. And so if you talk about the downsides, well, it ends up being more costly if you get 3 years plus. If you're doing a PC cycle, every 3 years, then you end up being cheaper with a virtual desktop. You still have needs for, let's say, graphics or animations, video, multimedia. If you have any of those things, there's Windows 365 PCs for you to do that really at scale. You're going to need to make sure that you're looking at the higher end of those things, right? Or if you're using the Azure Virtual Desktop, you're going to need to make sure you beef those resources up to meet those needs. If you need to connect to a local scanner or a bunch of printing needs that are kind of crazy, you're going to see some mileage that varies there in connecting to local peripherals. And then you still need these two things, which often get left out. One is you still need a device to connect from. Right? If you're using a virtual desktop, you're still going to need to get to it from something. And so that's something important to consider. Now, that device can be something low cost. We have somebody from our office right now that is using a Chromebook to connect in, and we're testing this Windows 365 environment, and it's doing great. And then lastly, of course, this stuff requires ongoing care and feeding. And a lot of folks think, well, I can just kind of jump in here and not worry about it. But if you're not managing it well, you don't know how to secure it, then you may end up with other problems as folks start to get to these virtual resources from personal PCs and those kinds of things. So that's kind of the whole deal here. We're in this period of questions now. And so we'll go ahead and I'll stop screen sharing and we'll open up for questions. I want to remind you guys, this QR code over here, now you can probably see it a little bit bigger. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and look for future Microsoft kinds of things we're doing. But tell me, what questions do we have? Do we have anything out there, Ryan?
Yeah, we got a couple questions, and actually, if you guys had something in Adam's chat or slide deck that kind of sparked something, go ahead and put that in the question box now. We'd love to try to answer as many of those as we can. Yeah, taking a look at a couple questions here. Got a few. Our insurance agency uses the Applied Epic software. Do virtual machines work well with that product?
That's a great question. So we do have lots of folks that are using, they're actually using virtual machines, that whether they're Windows 365 or Azure Virtual Desktop or virtual PCs, either one, and they work just fine with Epic, no problem at all. Yeah, they're great.
Awesome. I have another question here. Can I use, this is a good one, can I use Windows 365 for users that are based outside of the US or not local contractors, that kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually a really common use for virtual machines that we find that folks use it for helping, kind of the remote workforce. And the great news about that is you don't actually ever give them access to your data on a device that you're giving them. The data sits in the cloud, and they just use whether it's the Windows 365 or the Azure Virtual Desktop as a window in to get to it. So yeah, it works great for overseas workforce.
Yeah, like restricted applications too and stuff like that. That's great.
Definitely. Yep.
Let's see here. Got a couple more questions, it looks like. Do the PCs used for virtual desktops have to be powerful or as powerful as a physical machine you have?
Great question. So the PCs for virtual desktops, I had mentioned earlier, you could use a Chromebook even, and the Chromebook is a small form factor. It's a really lightweight footprint in terms of what it costs. I mean, you can get a Chromebook for, I don't know, $200-300. It's kind of crazy, and you could use that to connect into your PC. So yeah, it doesn't really cost much either. You also have the ability to use or grant a stipend to your employees towards their equipment purchase and say, hey, you can use your own personal PC. We don't have a problem with that. But you need to go ahead and after you do that, you're going to need to go ahead and we'll give you a couple dollars back, but you can connect into our infrastructure because we're going to secure, what access you have access to. So yeah.
And then it looks like maybe one more final question here, unless somebody else puts one in the chat here. Are there additional security risks with using a cloud PC that we need to be aware of?
It's actually, from a risk standpoint, it's easier to mitigate the risk on a device in the cloud than it is, allowing access to corporate data from a personal PC. A lot of folks go and they'll allow folks to connect to personal PCs to get access to things. What they don't realize is every time they allow that OneDrive to sync to that local PC, then their data is getting copied down to a personal device that they're not managing it. And so it's much easier to connect and manage things if you're providing a virtual resource, for sure.
Awesome. I think that's all the questions we had. Didn't have a ton, but a ton of really good information in those slides and presentation. So thank you, Adam. And thanks everybody for attending today's presentation. In a couple seconds here, when we kind of end things, you'll receive a survey, and go ahead and fill that out. Again, we'd love to hear from you, kind of what you thought was interesting, and also you'll be entered in automatically, again, to win a Microsoft 365 assessment of your environment. So we'd love to take a look and help you out there. If you do have additional questions, go ahead, you can email us or get in touch with us at kind of the ways here on the slide, engage@kitetechgroup.com. Visit our website, a couple different ways you can reach us there. And also just give us a call. That's our kind of main phone number. We're here definitely to help in any way that we can, kind of have a low pressure conversation if you're not already working with us of how you can leverage some of these tools. And yeah, with a reminder, we'll probably send in the next couple days here, follow-up email and a full recording of this session as well. So feel free to take a look at that in post and go ahead and share that as well once it's made available to you. So thanks again for attending today's session. Thank you, Adam, for the awesome presentation, and look forward to seeing you guys again in the future for more content. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody. Be well.